In today's video, I want to talk to you about what old school D&D rules you should maybe consider for your modern D20 game. Hey everybody, I am Game Master Matt and welcome back to the channel. As some of the videos have come out, you realize I kind of like old school D&D. I also like modern D&D. I like 5th edition. I like 4th edition. 3rd edition, I like Pathfinder 2nd edition, 13th Age, all those things. They're great games. But there are things about the older games, be that AD&D 1st, 2nd edition, Old School Essentials, Castles and Crusades, you name it, that teach us things that we can implement in, say, 5th edition or future editions of Dungeons & Dragons to make it better, actually, and maybe a little bit more fun. And today I'm going to talk about 3 rules that I really recommend you check out, and then 3 ones maybe think about. So let's start with number 1. So first, we're going to talk about something that I use here. I run Castles and Crusades a lot. I love this game. This is, when it's not official Dungeons and Dragons, the best D&D game that I really, really enjoy, especially in the old school style. They have something in here in terms of initiative. Now, initiative is obviously a major component of Dungeons and Dragons, and it can be a chore at times. Well, Castles and Crusades uses new initiative rolls every round. That's right. Every round you re-roll initiative, but you don't use a d20. You don't add your dex modifier or anything like that. No, instead you roll an unmodified d10. Everybody rolls a d10. The DM rolls d10 for adversary groups. Now, I wouldn't recommend this for each individual adversary, but maybe you have different groups, a couple of goblins, a couple of gnolls, a few bandits, whatever, however you parse it out. Maybe the big boss has its own. But every round, you roll a d10, you write it down, everyone calls it out, and the best way to remember that is actually you roll your d10, you leave it right in front of you. Same thing for a DM, just leave it right in front of you for your adversaries, and then you cycle through the combat. Highest goes first, goes down the line, and if there are ties, you just decide. I always decide in the tie, players go ahead of adversaries. Players can then choose amongst each other who goes first, or I just remember who has the higher dex value, and they go first. And then combat's done, re-roll, start again. Now, I know some of you will be looking at this going, oh, God, it's going to take forever to do that. Actually, no. I have run a number of 5th edition players through Castles and Crusades, and at first they also looked at it and went, so roll initiative every round? God, that's going to take forever. And then we did it. And after a couple of combats, they went, we absolutely love that, because guess what? You may be last in one round. You could be first the next round. It's dynamic. It's chaotic. It perfectly simulates the chaos of combat and does so super quickly because there's no math. You just roll. That's your number. Go. And that makes it fast. There's nobody sitting there rolling, okay, I rolled a 13, so gotta add +2. Because believe me, after running games for over 30 years and 5th edition and 3rd edition for the last 20 years, yeah, math +2 can be a problem for some players, especially in a high octane situation like combat. And so this takes that completely out. There's no thinking. Make your roll, call it out to the DM, they note it down, and off we go. It is fast, it is fun, it's a little chaotic, but it's controlled chaos, so that's something that I would recommend you try. Next, I'm going to another absolute favorite of mine, Old School Essentials. So if you're looking for BX D&D done a little bit cleaner and better, Old School Essentials is my recommendation. Also, they have first edition, so advanced version of this. But we're going to look at the classic fantasy rules. And in the back here, they've got something. I don't know if you can see that, but they have, well, you don't, because that was really fast and that wasn't very clean. So what they do have back here are monster reaction rolls. So one key aspect of old school play is also that players would sometimes try to parlay with a monster. Okay. So it's not just hack and slash. Yeah, I mean, skeletons, there's no talking, zombies, ghouls, but occasionally you'll get something that's maybe a little bit more intelligent and you talk to them. And the player with the highest charisma would then approach them and talk to them. It would be a 2d6 roll. modified by the engaging or parlaying character's charisma modifier. Say it's a +2, and you roll a 2d6. And higher is always better, and maybe they'll be friendly and they'll help you out. And this way, it's not always static, and not every monster's out to kill you. Now, obviously, there are those monsters that's just what they're going to do. If you bust into a troll lair, they're probably going to attack you. But if you're in a dungeon and there's a wandering, I don't know, walking around, maybe a group of kobolds, you can maybe talk to them instead. Maybe they'll help you. Maybe they'll guide you somewhere. And all of that is in a monster reaction roll. The highest roll, 12 plus, they're going to be friendly and they're going to be helpful. Obviously, a low roll, and they're just going to attack you. Some they may, help you a little bit. Some they may just ignore you. Other ones, they'll be wary of you, block your way, and then you kind of play from there. But monster reaction rolls make sure that no dungeon, no monster encounter is static and boring and predictable. Now, I had Old School Essentials before. Now I'm also adding Osric. Now, this is basically your AD&D 1E retro clone. This is your BX D&D retro clone. And we're going to talk about, random encounters. Random encounters. Use them. They are so much fun. And in Osric, they show a really nice bell curve. Now, they use a D100. That's not really what I would recommend, but they use a D100, and on either end of the bell curve, because you're more likely to get the numbers in the middle versus on the fringes, it goes from very rare to common as far as the type of monsters or type of encounters or people or whoever you would see in a random encounter. Now, in OSE, they use a system that I'm more of a fan of, that others also use, and that's a 2d6 system on a bell curve. So it just tightens it up. You can have you can have different subsections of random encounters, depending on the situation and the level of your players, with maybe the most dangerous ones on either spectrum as a 2 and a 12. They're very rare to roll them, but they're there. Those could be very difficult ones, and you get more to the middle, and it's more common. Maybe just somebody with a broken down cart. And then you riff off of that. I mean, that's part of it. Improv. Be an improv DM. Not everything has to be scripted and laid out perfectly. Sometimes the most fun for me are the things that just happen in a game. And random encounter tables really make that happen. Now, don't just use any old ones. Craft them specific to your game, your environment. It doesn't take long. A basic understanding of a monster manual, and you're already there. How do you trigger it? Well, that's the other thing. I would say you take a D6, you roll a 1, and you have a random encounter. Especially if you're doing a sandbox hex crawl, they're a ton of fun. And certain situations you could have, like say in the One Ring RPG, they have danger zones. Higher level of danger, maybe you roll a 2 or a 3, and then you get a random encounter. Low danger, it's a 1. So this way it just adds a little bit of intrigue and interest to it. And then maybe also throw in the reaction rules that I just talked about earlier. So those were 3 rules that I would really recommend you at least really consider implementing in your next 5th edition or maybe even Pathfinder game. I know Pathfinder has some unique mechanics, but there's no reason why you can't use that. Now, these next 3 ones are kind of more suggestions to think about. First one, AD&D 2nd edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Very good DMG. I do recommend you read them. Class-based XP rewards. Now, I've used milestone leveling, I've used session-based leveling, but honestly, over the years, I've gone back to just tracking XP because I like it. That's just me. And actually, when you do a lot of surveys I've watched online, the majority of people still like to track XP. So if you're tracking XP, what you have in here is an optional rule that I use. I use this for Castles and Crusades and my AD&D 2E campaigns. I've actually even used it in 5th edition. And Pathfinder 2nd edition. And that is class-based XP rewards. As an example for these. Now, I know, 5th edition is a little hard because especially in the first few levels, you level up really quickly. But you can always adjust these for the system in mind. So basically, when someone from a class uses a class ability to overcome a serious challenge, doesn't have to be combat necessarily, they gain XP. An example, a cleric uses Turn Undead. That's 100 XP. A rogue or a thief uses a rogue or thief ability to sneak up behind somebody and knock them out or whatever. That's 200 XP right there, or 50 XP maybe in third edition, just because, especially at first level, 200 XP, you've almost leveled up to second edition to second level. Don't even get me started on that. But yeah, class-based. The other things they have in here are really great because the Bard was completely different back then. For each hit die value of an opponent, you get 5 extra XP. So you get the XP of the opponent. Now, XP in old school play is lower for defeating an opponent, but this gives a Bard, as an example, an extra boost because they're a little bit more combat oriented in old school play. A fighter, for example, would get 10 XP extra per hit dice of a monster. And even in 5th edition, you can see the hit dice simply by, they're listed. And you take a look at that and say, okay, that's extra XP for defeating this monster. And that kind of leads me into another one, kind of into that is maybe lower the XP values of monsters, especially if you're getting a lot of murder hobo-y behavior from your players. Dial those down. I've done games where I just cut them in half, just straight up cut them in half, done. Because then the XP rewards are more somewhere else, and it also rewards those players who are combat heavy to do more combat in those type of situations, because it plays into who they are. The other thing I would recommend, this comes from old school games, is maybe change how multi-classing works. This is specifically for 5th edition, because actually in Pathfinder 2nd edition, I really like the multi-classing. It's not really multi-classing, but how that works. Looking at it in old school, if you bring that into 5th edition, if you want to multi-class, well, then it's very simple. You have to declare that at level 1. You don't get to do the typical, I'm going to dip into wizard at level 4. No, you declare right off the bat, I'm going to multi-class. I'm going to be a wizard fighter. And how do you level up? Well, you double and this is, again, you would have to count XP, but you simply double the XP. So instead of needing 300 XP to get to level 2, don't get me started on that. But if you need 300 XP to get to level 2, guess what? Now you need 600. Because why not? You have all the benefits of a fighter and a wizard. You're pretty badass, but you always then level up both at the same time. It just takes you longer to get to the next level. And I think that's okay. But that way you're not, completely behind on certain things, and it just puts a little bit of a, I'm not going to say limitation on it, but it gives a little bit more structure, makes it a little more challenging. And maybe you say, hey, let's run a campaign. Everyone's a multi-class. It's just going to take you twice as long to get to the next level. Last but not least, this shouldn't be a surprise. Don't balance your encounters. Run unbalanced encounters. And yes, I'm even looking at you, Pathfinder 2nd edition players. Maybe you don't follow the encounter math every single time. I get why it's there. It's very well balanced. It's very well thought out. I find it at times a little bit tedious. But 5th edition players, we all know that CR is broken. Challenge rating it's meaningless. So just run unbalanced. Don't worry about balance. Now, I'm not, again, advocating for throwing, a Tarrasque at a 2nd level party. But who cares if there are more orcs there? And orcs are pretty bad in 5th edition, especially they're tough at lower levels just because they can deal a lot of damage. But throw in a few more, make it unbalanced, make it challenging for the players, because having run a lot of 5th edition and just wrapped up a 2-year campaign 2 weeks ago, challenging your players is a challenge at times. And I run unbalanced and unfair encounters, one could even say. Heck, 4th level characters decided to take on a beholder. Now, that was on them, not on me. But I didn't pull punches. And yes, somebody was disintegrated. But that's the way it goes. And they had a lot of fun. It'll always be in their memory. So that was kind of the last one. Maybe look at unbalanced encounters. But that's a general rule of thumb. I think balanced encounters and combat balance is very, very overrated. So there you have it, everybody. Those are some old school D&D rules that you may want to consider implementing in your modern D20 game, be it, D&D 5th edition or otherwise. If you enjoyed this video and you found it all helpful, please hit like, subscribe, and until next time, I'm Game Master Matt. I'll talk to you soon.